He had a subpar football career, but his experience booked him a coaching job. He took it and ran with it. He climbed the coaching chain and now has the recently bottom-feeding Detroit Lions in the race for the NFC North title in 2023. This is the story of Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell was born on April 13th in 1976 in Clifton, Texas, a town of only 3,488 people. He was born to his parents, Larry and Betty Campbell. He attended Glen Rose High School, where he played tight end. He didn't get his chance on varsity until his junior season, where he was still used scarcely in the offense. He finished the year with 12 receptions for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. He carried a heavier workload as a senior. He recorded 27 catches for 423 yards and 5 receiving touchdowns, as well as over 50 yards on the ground. This 2-season high school career was enough to earn him a scholarship to Texas A&M. He committed and signed to the Aggies, where he was coached by R.C. Slocum, now a Texas A&M Hall of Famer. He was used primarily as a blocker throughout college, but he still had a few productive seasons. His freshman year was not one of them. He appeared in 11 games, but didn't have a single catch. His sophomore season was an improvement, as he recorded 8 catches for 103 yards through the 12 games he appeared in. His junior year was again an improvement, albeit a small one. He had 12 receptions for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. This would end up being the best year he had as an Aggie. As a senior, he played in a career-high 13 games, but had his worst season since his freshman year. He caught only 7 passes for a mere 68 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. Regardless of his subpar college career, he still caught the eye of the New York Giants, who were in desperate need of a tight end. They drafted Campbell in the 3rd round with the 79th overall pick of the 1999 NFL Draft. Through his first 2 seasons, he only started 6 games and was only targeted 14 times. In 2001 and 2002, he had 35 catches for 323 yards and 2 touchdowns. Prior to the 2003 season, he was signed by the Cowboys, where he would end up playing 3 years. He had 235 yards receiving on 25 catches as well as 2 touchdowns in his Cowboys tenure. He was signed again by the Detroit Lions in 2006. He had his best season that year. He recorded 21 receptions for 308 yards and 4 touchdowns. His career was then plagued by injuries. He suffered an elbow injury in 2007 and was placed on the injured reserve. He only played 2 games. 2008 was worse, as a hamstring injury only let him play 1 game, while the rest were spent on the injured reserve. He was released by the Lions in 2009. The Saints took a shot and signed him for the 2009 season. Unfortunately, he tore his MCL in training camp and didn't play all year. The Saints won the Super Bowl that year, and Campbell wasn't granted a ring because of his lack of playing time. He retired at the season's end, and that was the end of his playing career. His love for the game never wavered as he took the tight ends coach job with the Miami Dolphins when the position opened up. He coached in Miami from 2011 to 2015. From 2012 to 2014, his yardage-leading tight ends finished 3rd in receiving yards on the team. Campbell built Charles Clay into a solid tight end that was featured often in the game plan. In 2015, the current head coach, Joe Philbin, was fired after a 1-3 start on the year. Campbell was placed as the interim. He went 5 for 7 with the team, and they finished 6-10 on the year. Sean Payton loved the work ethic and grind he saw from Dan Campbell, so he hired him as his assistant as well as the team's tight ends coach in 2016. He would be set to work alongside Payton, who had coached him just 7 years earlier. 2016 was a down year as the Saints finished third in the NFC South at 7-9. The offense wasn't the problem, as they finished second in the league in points scored. The defense finished 31st in points allowed. The script flipped, though, in 2017 as the Saints finished 11-5 and won the NFC South. They made the divisional round after a win over the Panthers and went on to face the Minnesota Vikings. We all know how that one finished. The team was determined to wash that taste out of their mouths in the 2018 season, and that is exactly what they did. The Saints finished 13-3 and won the NFC South for the second consecutive season, as well as securing a first-round bye. They advanced past the Eagles in the divisional round this time and headed to the NFC Championship game for the first time since 2010. Unfortunately, heartbreak struck again as they lost to the Rams on a walk-off 57-yard field goal by Greg Zuerlein. This game was tainted by a terrible no-call on an obvious pass interference. 2019 was a great year for Campbell, as one of his tight ends, Jared Cook, made the Pro Bowl and finished the year with just under 1,000 receiving yards. The Saints again finished 13-3 and won the South for the third straight season. Heartbreak followed the Saints into the rematch with the Vikings, where Kyle Rudolph sent them home on a 4-yard TD catch in overtime. I'll skip the drama for 2020. They won the South for the fourth time in a row and lost to their divisional rival Bucs in the divisional round 30-20. Though the Saints won the NFC South 4 consecutive times, it was never enough to make it past the conference championship game. It was finally time for Dan Campbell to write a new chapter in his lengthening coaching career. He was successful in New Orleans and showed a player-friendly coaching philosophy as well as grit and toughness. This was exactly what the Detroit Lions were looking for in the midst of head coach Matt Patricia's firing. Patricia was 13-29-1 through his first 2.5 seasons with the team and had the Lions at the bottom of the league. Dan Campbell was hired on January 20th, 2021 as the Lions' 30th head coach in franchise history. The Lions took the route of rebuilding through the draft. For this reason, Campbell's first season was a disappointment, as the Lions went 3-13-1. His offense finished 25th in the league in points scored. The Lions added players like defensive end Aiden Hutchinson and wide receiver Jameson Williams in the 2022 draft, and players like wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown and offensive tackle Penei Sewell continued to excel going into their second season. Campbell played 85 different players in 2022, and 10 rookies started 66 combined games, as he looked for the formula that worked for his guys. The Lions struggled early as they sat at 1-6 going into Week 9, as they had trouble finding their identity. It was looking like the Matt Patricia years all over again, and the Lions fans were getting restless. That's when Campbell and his squad flipped a switch. They went on an 8-2 tear through their last 10 games behind an offensive explosion from Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They were a win against the Panthers or a Seahawks loss to the Rams away from making the playoffs as the last seed in the NFC. It was the Lions' first winning season since 2017, and the offense finished 5th in the league in scoring. His team began to believe in his coaching, and they ran with it. He led a gritty team, and he left a lot of responsibility to his veteran guys. He led with passion and let his experience play out in front of everyone. On top of all this, the Lions own the 6th pick in the upcoming draft via the Rams due to the Matthew Stafford trade, as well as the 18th pick. They will likely use these picks on defense in search of taking the next step in 2023. Dan Campbell, the coach fans are now calling the savior of Detroit football, used his own style to create a team that trusts him. He has the Lions in the 2023 playoff hunt, and I believe we will see them there. Motor City Dan Campbell, as he has been adequately nicknamed, is finally the coach that the Lions franchise has so desperately longed for. Thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and leave a comment down below if you think the Lions will actually be able to make the playoffs in 2023.